In order to have an end of your rigging cord that is not frayed, a good idea is to secure the rope with a few wraps of electrical tape and then to cut through the mid portion of the electrical tape to provide an unfrayed end as your working end. Once your rigging cord has been cut, it is important to pre-stretch the rigging cord between two bodies as demonstrated here. Alternately, you can stretch your rigging cord between a body and an immobile object such as a tree as demonstrated here. To prevent slippage of the Iako on the canoe, you can oftentimes use a piece of bicycle tire inner tube cut the width and thickness of the vise. When measuring to determine how far to space your ama from the outrigger canoe hull, we measure from the outside wall of the gunwale to the center of the ama. To determine whether to rig square or towed in is based on personal preference and design features. When rope rigging the Iako to the vise, a preliminary step to reduce slippage of the Iako on the vise can be to secure with a few wraps of a bicycle tire inner tube. It is also important prior to initiating rigging to ensure that the canoe and the ama are both on level ground and that the canoe is level both front to back and from side to side. The ama can be raised by either using rigging horses or perhaps spare PFDs to ensure that the Iakos are sitting flat on the vise. Once you have created a temporary attachment of your Iako to the vise with the bicycle tire inner tubes, you're ready to rig with the rope. Take the rope that you have pre-cut and fold in a closed loop. Pass the loop over the vise from front to back, running the closed loop down the back of the vise and passing the two ends of the rigging cord through the loop and pull the slack. This initial loop of rigging cord is then centered to the middle of the vise, keeping the closed end of the loop at the bottom. This allows upward pull of tension. An alternate way to start the center loop of the rigging is to tie a knot at the midpoint of the rigging cord. This creates a closed loop that is secure in a method that prevents any slippage of the left and right pieces of the rope. Rope rigging an outrigger canoe can be done with 2 people, but it is easier to do with 4 people to assist in pulling the cord lengths. From this point forward with your rigging, it is essential to keep tension on the cord at all times. The first pull is to feed the line up the front of the vise over the top of the Iako and then secure the line in place, oftentimes by using the heel of your hand. The remaining cord is taken and utilizing a folded loop passed through the puka on the side of the hull. The remaining line is then pulled through the puka. It is essential as well to keep your workspace clean and dry. If this is not possible, then oftentimes you can pull the rope and place it in the center of the hull instead of the ground to assist in keeping the cord clean and dry. Once the rigging cord has been pulled through the puka on the side of the canoe, It is essential to tauten down this first cinch. Make sure both people work in unison and either push down on the rigging cord, or an alternate method is to utilize a small piece of doweling, and you can pull up, sometimes down, depending on your preference, to secure the cord. Once the cord has been pulled through the puka, you then pass the cord underneath the Iako, running over top of the Iako, securing it with the heel of your hand. Create a closed loop, and again passing underneath the Iako, you pass the cord through the forward puka on the gunnel. Shown here is a repetition of the same lashing that was just completed on the outer gunnel of the Iako. When you are rigging on the side of the Iako that is attached to the ama, it is slightly more difficult as the cord has a tendency to want to tangle around the Iako. The steps, however, are the same. The cord comes out of the rear puka, passes underneath the Iako, over top the Iako, down again underneath the Iako, and is pulled through the forward puka on the side of the gunnel, remembering at all times to keep tension on the cord, oftentimes by placing a hand on the topmost surface of the Iako. The next step in rigging involves taking your rigging cord and crossing from the inside wall of the forward puka to lay the line over top of the Iako. This will form an X on the line you started with on your first wrap. Secure the X with pressure from the heel of your hand. You pass the cord down the rear of the vai, and when you reach the original closed loop that you created at the start of your rigging, you cross the rope over to the side of the loop relative to the side of the hull you are standing on, so that your rope will finish on the opposite side of the loop. Next, we pull the rigging cord up the front of the vai and cross over the top of the Iako and lay the cord over the existing X in the cord. Make sure the X is centered in the middle of the Iako. From this point forward, each subsequent X is laid down in this manner. The inside X lays down inside the inside, moving towards the center of the vai. The cord is now placed in the rear puka and pull through the slack. When you are working through the puka, it is important to try and build the rope on the top side of the circle to have the cord better able to cinch on itself. The cord is then once again passed underneath the Iako, wrapping around over top. The cord layers are layered from outside on the outside for each subsequent wrap, moving towards the outer portion of the Iako. The cord is then again passed through the forward puka, keeping tension on the line and pulling all of the residual cord through the puka. Once the residual rigging cord has been pulled through the forward puka, the crisscross pattern is repeated again and again until approximately 5 loops have been created. If your line is longer, you can create a few more X's for extra security. Once you have completed the 5th crossing over on the top of the vise, we are going to pass the rigging cord one more time down the front of the vise, crossing over to the opposite side. The cord is then passed underneath the vise and is then ready to begin the closing loops. You should have enough cord to complete 3 or 4 cinchings of the ropes around the vise. The next step to secure the rope lashing of the canoe is to create the waist cinch. We take the end of the rigging cord and pass it from the rear to the front of the vise on the outside of all of the X's that you have created in the rigging cord. The rope then is passed under tension to the opposite side and passed again, now going from a front to back direction to create a waist cinch. You repeat this process again and again, taking up slack and keeping the tension until a waist cinch is created, probably in the average of 4 to 5 times. Once the 4 or 5 waist cinches have been created, we will close off the rigging with a reef knot. An additional thought to consider at this time, however, is that all of the rope rigging has been done with dry cord. It is important when you're finished your rigging to either test float your canoe and make sure you apply water to the cord to ensure shrinkage and tightening of the cord, or if this is not possible, to actually take buckets of water and pour it over your lashing to allow it to wetten and then subsequently dry prior to racing to ensure that you have tight rigging. Oftentimes, you can finish your rigging by applying a simple reef knot. One thing to consider, however, is that when your cord is wet and you're done racing, you have to remove the rigging from the hull. And you want to remember that the knot that you tie is one that you want to be secure, but don't get overzealous because the person behind you has to remove it. Once your finishing knot has been completed, if you have any cord length left, you can use it to secure a baler, or you can create a closed loop and anchor it by pulling it up under your previous lashing. If rope is not available, rigging can be done with ratchet straps. You need 4, and the initial canoe setup is the same way, measuring from the outside gunnel to the center of the ama to determine your spacing. Once your canoe has been measured and the canoe and the ama are level, you can create a temporary lashing using a bicycle tire inner tube. In this case, it is important to lash in the middle of the vise to allow yourself spacing at the gunnel walls to apply the ratchet straps. Step 1 is to open the ratchet fully and placing it flat against the surface of the vise. The ratchet strap is then passed over top of the Iako, down the other flat surface of the vise, looping up from the underneath, over top the Iako, and then the strap is passed towards the puka. Once the strap has been pulled through the puka, it is passed underneath the Iako, over top, wrapping around again underneath, making sure it is close to the hull as possible. The strap is then passed through the puka. The strap is then placed over top of the Iako and vise. It is passed down the back surface, up and around the underneath portion of the vise, and passed through the slot of the ratchets, taking up tension. The strap is then pulled through the opening between the ratchet slot and the handle of the ratchet, and the ratchet is subsequently tautened until secure and is left in a closed position.